Hey everyone, welcome back to Taking Back Monday. I am so excited you decided to join us and say goodbye to the Sunday Scaries. I am so excited to introduce you to our guest today. Welcome to the show, Isabelle.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
So I was looking through your bio and trying to prepare for this conversation. You've had a really interesting and varied background. Tell us a little bit more about how you came to be you.
Yeah, well, I really had no idea what I wanted to do. And my dad had been a real estate investor. I kind of kept my eye on that for a while, but went down a bunch of different journeys, a bunch of different career paths, and ended up asking him if I could be his personal assistant. I slowly worked my way up to becoming the COO of his companies. And when he passed in 2021, I really had to take everything over. I had to jump from that integrator seat to the visionary seat and move forward. And in 2023, I launched my own podcast called the Young Boss Podcast. And it's been a whole lot of fun just helping inspire other young entrepreneurs just like you do on this show. So senior housing is kind of my realm professionally. And then my fun professional is helping inspire other young entrepreneurs.
I love that. I got into podcasting trying to get over being nervous on these kinds of environments and being nervous in life. So I literally was like, okay, that's one of the things holding me back. So I'm going to start a podcast. So I have to practice and get into it. What I discovered in that process is how exciting and rewarding it is to talk to people who I would never be able to have a conversation with otherwise. I've talked to incredible people from all over the world simply because I have this medium.
Yeah, it is so much fun. It's the best hearing other people's stories. And I leave so inspired every time I record a podcast. I'm like, wow, these people are amazing.
Right? A little bit of me is like, wow, they're doing really cool stuff. What am I doing?
There you go.
I'll try to get my life together. So, you said that you kind of started as an assistant and worked your way up to be the COO of the company. And obviously with a familial relation there, do you feel like it was harder for you to be that person who excels? Were you under more scrutiny than a normal employee?
I would say not necessarily coming from my father who started it, because when we started, there was 3 of us and we now have 50 employees. So built the entire team with him. Every hire I made, I was social media, I was doing tax prep, I was HR, I was sales, I was marketing, I was everything until I didn't have the capacity and said, I got to hire this out. I need my time back. And so I think from him, he trusted me along the way. But other people, of course, they view me as a Nepo baby. They have no idea what I have done behind the scenes to make this all happen. And listen, I'll wear that badge proudly because I would not have had this opportunity if my dad did not become an entrepreneur and take a chance on himself and start his own thing. It's not like I grew up knowing that I was going to take over his business. I entered it as an adult. I had graduated college. I had other careers. I asked to be a part of it. It's very different than your parents own a pizza shop and you're you're going to have to take over one day. It was very different, but it doesn't matter. Other people view it however they want to view it. Mm-hmm. So I have had to get over that from more outside perspective, less from internal, because I feel like my dad always treated me no, you did the work. You deserve it.
Totally. I can see that too. People who are coming in. So you mentioned that you kind of were doing everything. You've done social media and tax prep and all of this work. When you finally decided to take that time back and you hired someone in, one, how did you find, what was that trigger point for you to decide, hey, I got to get some time back. This is not my highest and best use, if you will, and get that time back. And two, how did you delegate successfully to make sure that that person came in and was successful in this role that you had essentially been holding previously?
Yeah, I think the first thing I realized was someone taught me about a 4-box quadrant method. And I don't know if you've heard of this, but the first box is what you love to do and what you're amazing at. The next one is what you love to do, but you're not so good at. And then it's what you don't like to do, but you're good at, and what you don't like to do and you suck at, right? And that's the box you want to focus on. You always want to hire out that because you're not good at it and you don't want to do it. So it's always falling to the bottom of your list. So when things start to get overwhelming, I'll whip out that chart, put it next to my desk for a week and start writing every single thing I do and which box does it fall into. And there becomes your job requirements. That's what you're looking for. Sometimes it doesn't always piece together perfectly, but it's really, that's what you're looking for. And a lot of times I built different opportunities within our company based on what that list said, more or less. So that's one of the first ways that I always know, okay, I'm getting too overwhelmed, whip out my 4-box, make my list, and that's what we're hiring for next. When it comes to training and onboarding them, a beautiful thing about training somebody in a role you've already been in is you're like, hey, this is how I do it. But something I've always empowered my staff to do is say, this is how I do it. But listen, I'm hiring you because you're better than me. I'm hiring you because you should know better than me. And I don't want you to do the same thing I was doing. If you're going to do that, I may as well keep the job. I'm going to show you what I do, and I want you to show me what you're going to do. And so creating those systems and methods through tools like Trainual, Loom, even Zoom, all those different tools help you kind of build that training process. But then it's about empowering them. Like, I'm going to show you, but now you show me. And I think that actually makes people have a lot more buy-in into a company because they're like, wow, I'm like a leader in this. I'm special.
To so many things that I would want to respond to, but the first one is I've heard of that box before that you talked about, right? Like the 4 quadrants. One thing that you said that struck me as kind of unique is the idea of putting it next to your desk and letting it absorb over a week. Because I feel like when I'm getting that box out, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to write down everything I've possibly ever done or could ever do. And it gets really overwhelming really fast. And then I'm like, okay, I don't want to do this anymore. But the idea of just letting it be a part of your week and as things come in, put them in the box, I think that makes it a lot more digestible, a lot easier to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's impossible for us to sit down and think of every single thing we do. But just if you said, this is my week, I'm going to do it, you have it there and it's like in front of you. It's right next to you. Right. When you do a task, put it in 1-4. Okay, next task, put it in the 4. And it will force you to do it. And it makes it a lot more digestible. I agree.
Yeah, I can imagine just having it on my whiteboard and saying, okay, today I'm doing this and it has to be me, right?
Yeah.
The second part of that, let's talk about empowerment of people on your team. So you said you went from 3 people, 1 being you and 1 being your dad, to now 50 people on the team, and the importance of empowering. How do you tactically or practically do that? How do you make that an intentional decision to create boundaries for your team that allow them to feel like it's truly something that they own?
Yeah, I think with each role, it slowly developed over time. Like, I didn't have an intention to have that large of a team. It was just like, okay, I'm overwhelmed. We now need to hire a marketing person. Okay, I'm overwhelmed. We need someone who's a fractional CFO or whatever the case is. And you slowly start to build. And as things develop in your business, you start to see more and more needs. And sometimes that person who you hired to be the end all be all, they're like, now I need help, right? And they start doing the same methods within their own departments. And then you can empower them to say, okay, marketing guy, what do you need? He says, I need a social media strategist. And it goes from there. And we kind of can create the jobs from there. I think it's really hard to start a business and say, here's the 50 people I need to hire. Like, that's tough because you're taking on a huge accountability. You're taking on a lot of financial strain and responsibility. We don't hire somebody until I know that if I hire them, it's going to make me back more money somehow, some way. Right. So that's hard to assign to people who aren't in traditional sales. Sales is easy because it's like, did you make a sale or not? Okay, you brought me in more money. Well, what about a copywriter? How do I know if me hiring a copywriter will help me bring sales, right? It's tough. And so there are different like metrics you can learn along the way for every role that will help you kind of get down to what dollar amount is acceptable. And then can I afford them if I know that they're going to in turn bring me in X amount of money?
It's so funny that you say this because one of the conversations I just had at the beginning of this week was, how do we define everyone's role inside the company related to revenue? You are either revenue generating or revenue responding, right? Yeah. If you work in operations, you're responding to revenue. There's a reason for you to be here. You're doing billings, accounts receivable, you're dealing with payroll, you're dealing with all of that. If you do client services, you might not be out there selling, but you're responding and creating value, which makes that next sale that much easier. And we had this conversation about defining everyone's impact on revenue and being very specific to say, this is what we expect you to do and how we expect you to impact revenue, whether you're generating revenue or responding to revenue.
Yep, exactly. If everyone should have a number, right? This is their number. This is what they wake up and they know that they're aiming for. It also makes things very objective because it's like, did you hit it or not? And if you didn't, you know why you're on the chopping block. You know why I'm putting you on a PIP or adjusting your KPIs and all the fun acronyms we use.
100%. And it is really important too, as a leader, to create some level of objectivity. There's a whole trend on TikTok that I'm seeing right now where it's like, oh, I'm the personality hire. I don't actually have any skills, but people just like me. But at the end of the day, like, this is a business. I'm trying to do something. It's not a hobby. It's not a social event. I want to have revenue. I want to do good things, but good things in the pursuit of revenue and financial stability.
Absolutely. And I think there is such a disconnect, especially on social media. I see it all the time too, between the employee mindset and the employer mindset, right? I'll find myself on the employee mindset TikTok like that, saying, oh, personality, I'm this, that. People saying, I don't want to be 1099. I want W-2. I want security. I want this. I want benefits. You need to pay me a livable wage and screw commission. You just need to pay me flat rate, whether or not I'm making sales. And I'm like, what? And then I go on more of the entrepreneurial, I'll get on that realm. And everyone's like, no, if they're not producing, they don't deserve to be here. Like it's so funny because these worlds, they're so different, but yet we work together every single day. And how do we communicate to them what we need from them so they can understand how this works and how they can be successful?
It's a dependent, symbiotic relationship, whatever word you want to use. And you're right. It is a very different side of TikTok where I'll end up on the disgruntled employee, I'll call it.
Yes.
The person who well, I don't want to be a family. Like, you're not my family. You're my coworkers. I'm like, yeah, but you should want to feel like we all care about the same thing. Right. That's what we mean. That's what I mean when I say, oh, we're like a family. I want to care about the same things that you do. You and your family have the same values. You care about the same things. At the end of the day, yes, I'm paying you, but I want you to have the same vision of what good looks like and what our future outcomes are going to be that I have as the leader versus the employee.
Yeah, I think it's really tough. And I also think there's always huge generational shifts, right? What boomers were okay with is not what millennials are okay with. And in turn, we're seeing Gen Z now coming into the workforce, basically busting down everything even we thought and knew and believed to be true. And it's just Gen Alpha is going to do the same thing. Every generation has a full revamp of culture, but work culture too.
100%. And that's honestly one of the reasons why I wanted to start this podcast and have these conversations, because I did see a lot of those TikToks where it was like, it's just a job, 9 to 5, go in, do your thing, go home and live your real life outside of your job. And I didn't join a normal career path when I left college. I joined a startup. I was technically number 1, but person number 3. And we didn't have any revenue and we didn't have any sales. And there was no way that we had a plan in place to do that. And I had to go and figure out, much like you, how do we market? How do we do sales? What do we do when we actually win something? What happens next? I had to kind of be all of those pieces. And it gave me a real appreciation for the scrappiness and the adaptability that's required and the risk associated with joining a company like that, where you're figuring everything out and it's all on you. If you don't make the calls, no one's making the calls. If you don't close the deals, no one's closing the deals.
Yep. You were an intrapreneur, right? You owned your own little piece of the business within the business. And it's so true. The risk involved in that, when people work there's a stark difference between corporate America and these huge, large corporations where you are a cog in the system, and startups or family businesses or small businesses. And I do see that it's really interesting when you get an employee from a corporate culture who comes into a family business, they're all like, what's this? Where's this? And we don't like that. Like, we figure it out and all hands on deck. And if there's a problem, we're all solving it. And they're like, what? Night and day, those two work cultures.
It's absolutely. I've never worked for a large company. I've either worked for this small startup that I told you about or for myself. There's really never been that opportunity, but I do consult with some of these huge companies. And I go into these environments and it blows my mind that it takes 2 weeks to approve 2 lines of copy that's going to get emailed out to 6 people. It's like,
No.
it shouldn't be this hard. No wonder you guys don't get anything done, because there's all of these roadblocks and success antibodies that come in and attack on whatever their little fiefdom is inside these huge corporations.
It's wild. I so prefer smaller business, startups, because that is my personality, right?
Yeah.
Is to just be like, let me help everywhere in any way I can. And when we talk about taking back Monday, that's tough because that is like against my personality of being like, I'll do whatever it takes. I'll jump in whatever. But at some point, when you become a leader in that organization, core values are not words you put on a wall and everybody is like, oh, wow, that's amazing. That fits me, right? Core values are just who the leader is oozing out into the business.
Right.
And it's like your kids, right? They're going to take your negative traits and you're like, dang it, I didn't want them to see that or have that. But they saw it in you, they felt it in you, and they took it over. Your employees do the exact same thing. Whatever you like, your negative business traits, they take. And one of mine was overworking. And when I would see them go on vacation and be picking up the phone at Disneyland to have a meeting, and then I'm like, absolutely not. Like, you're on vacation with your kids. Do not answer. And they were like, why? You answer on vacation. And I was like, oh shit. Like, I just set the worst example for them. No work-life balance. And I realized the only way to fix it was by me fixing it. Like, I literally needed to go on a vacation where I didn't answer their calls. That's the only way I could fix this, to prove to them, I want you to do this. I'm serious about you doing this. So when it's taking back Monday, it's taking back your life if you're a business owner.
Yeah, 100%. It's so funny that you say that, because we're like the same person. I'm the same way. I will take calls. I have a distinct memory actually of doing a sales call in line at like the zoo with my kids. And the wake up moment for me was I was working late one night, and I still do work late. Like, I'm a business owner. That's just what you do. But I'm working late, and my daughter, who was I think 4 at the time or 3 at the time, comes in with her little toy laptop to sit in the corner and to do it. And she was just going to work in the corner. And then she looks up at me and she goes, Mom, I wish you had a normal job so you could spend time with me. Oh. And I just like heart broke in that moment. And I like turned around and looked at her and I was like, Mom's done. What do you want to do? Shall we go play Barbie? Shall we go like, I had that moment of my child's earliest memories of me as their mom is glued to my computer, glued to my phone. And I'm not a normal mom because I don't take the time to play with them.
Heartbreaking. It's literally so heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Like my dad had been a business owner his whole life doing different things, right? Not just what we do now, but I remember always, like, if I think of him as a child, I think of him sitting in his office. That's what he did. Right. When we walked in, he'd be present with us. It was all on us, but he's in his office. And if the door is shut, you don't go in, right? It's only when the door is open that you're allowed to go in and have your time with them. But I think about that all the time. My son is just 5 months old now. And every time I spend time with him, it's so tempting to just pick up your phone because I'm like, it'll take 2 seconds.
And he's 5 months old. What is he? I mean, he's not going to remember, right?
Right. And I'm like, no, I'm trying to be so conscious. I'll literally leave my phone in the office to go spend my time with him. And once he is asleep, I'm like, okay, now I can come back and work more. But I feel like kids put everything into perspective for sure.
100%. They got to be in charge of inventing all the words, right? Because they have way better descriptions for words than we do.
Yeah.
But also for creating that perspective. On the flip side, though, like my dad was very successful and a high level executive for a corporation. My mom owns her own real estate agency. So like I've had them throughout my entire life, highly successful people, very driven people. And I remember thinking like that's what success looks like. So I do want my kids to look at me and say, she's a badass. Like my mom does really cool stuff, and want them to see that example that hard work pays off and turns out. So it's like finding that balance between showing them that you can work hard and achieve your dreams and still be a good parent.
When I love that, because there is something to be said about that. When they get to, if you worked out of the house, she'd never see you work, right? Mm-hmm. You never see that you are giving your life so that you can provide a beautiful home for them. And I think my dad pretty much was working from home. It was a lot of laptop and phone stuff. And so that was really cool to be able to see him in that way.
Yeah.
And even my mom, who was a stay-at-home mom, but basically made it her career, right? She was like a professional stay-at-home mom, fresh meals every day, all the clothes, the sports, the this, the
Taking you to
that.
all the activities, right?
Oh,
That's a
everything,
job in and
right?
of itself,
It
honestly.
is, it's a job for kids. It's a job. So I never saw her sit to watch TV or watch a movie ever. She wasn't like, she never sat. She was always moving, cleaning, doing this, cooking, whatever. And to
Hustling
me,
in her own environment, right?
feeling she was a hustler. And so I'm like, okay, I have two full-time working parents. I didn't even register that being a stay-at-home mom wasn't a traditional career. To me, that was a career. She was working.
She was working. She was busy.
She was busy.
I love that. And I think it's important to recognize that no matter what choice you make, whether it's a traditional career where you're working a 9 to 5, climbing the corporate ladder, starting your own business, or running a home, like that choice has to be something that fulfills you and that brings you joy and that moves you forward. And who cares what anyone else says about it? That is your choice that makes the difference for you and for your life and for your family.
Absolutely.
Well, we're running out of time and I wish we weren't because I could probably talk to you for the rest of the day. One of the things we always ask people on the show is to kind of put someone else in the hot seat. So in your mind, who out there is really leading the charge on Taking Back Monday?
Immediately who comes to mind is one of my wonderful childhood friends that her name's Ann Stopak, and she's like incredible. She's worked for Playboy. She's worked for Off Saks, Fifth Avenue. She's worked for all these amazing and prestigious things in fashion journalism. That's kind of the realm she's taken. But over the last couple of months, she was realizing she was so unhappy at work. It wasn't just scary Sundays. It was scary every day of the week, right? And she was like, I can't do this anymore. Like I'm starting to like have mental health issues. Like I need to get out of this. And so without knowing what her next step was, she just knew that this wasn't right for her and completely left a really amazing career, something she dreamed of her whole life, but it wasn't actually what she wanted or needed. And so I'm like so proud of her because now she's starting her own business. She's like working hard on doing her own thing. And I'm like, you go, girl. Like,
Right.
she's taking back her whole life, not just Monday. But when she described it to me that way, like imagine feeling Sunday scaries every single day. That's what I feel. And I was like, oh my God, like you need to get out just for your sanity. And she was like, no, I am. Like I quit. I'm like,
you go, girl.
yeah.
I love that.
So I feel like that's just like immediately what came to mind is sometimes people really like, even if it is your dream career, you're so stuck on, I have this title or I'm getting this pay or what am I going to do if I don't take that leap? If you don't take that leap, you're going to work yourself till you're sick. And that's what you're going to do. So whether it's taking back your Monday or your whole week or your life, you got to do what you got to do to stay sane and stay normal. We're humans at the end of the day. We're not just employees or business owners.
I love it. I'm a big believer in be all in or be all out. If you're not all in, it's time to be all out so you can be all in on something else.
Exactly. Love that.
So lastly, if someone really connected with you, they want more from you, where can they find you online?
Yeah, we have, I think we're on pretty much everything, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube at the Young Boss Podcast. So feel free to go there or theyoungbosspodcast.com. Definitely check out the podcast and give us a follow or a subscribe.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Isabelle. Thanks for being on Taking Back Monday.
Thank you for having me.